How appropriate was it to the piece and the presenting space in the context of the director's vision, if you can figure out what that was, which is kind of difficult some places. And then, is it consistent throughout the piece? And then a couple years ago, we added, how hard was it? Not just how good was it, but how hard was it to do? The level of difficulty for that element has to be evaluated. Just because you liked it doesn't mean it gets a 10. It's one of those things where, how hard was it the character to put on that actor? If you see them off stage and they're the exact same person you saw on stage, that's not that hard for them to do, clearly. Okay? Regardless of your personal likes and dislikes, and based on what is average watch community theater to you. This is what we have a tough time with our tougher judges, and the judges that know the most about theater, they get to really, it's like, this could have been so much better if they start giving lower scores, because it should have been better, and it could have been better. But in truth, we're asking them not how good it could have been, but how does it compare to what they normally see and watch. That's a real tough thing, because a lot of people go to see New York shows, or Kennedy Center shows, or Arena Stage, or Signature, or whatever the case may be, and they wind up comparing community theater to those shows. That's not fair to community theater. Base your average on what is average in watch and across watch stages. And if you're a new judge, that'll be tough for you, because you're not going to know what average is yet. So your first year, you're going to wind up giving a lot of low scores possibly, and then realize next year I got to adjust because now I've set a new bar, a new average in community theater. The last bullet on the slide is something that survived from the beginning of watch. One of our reps really decided that if our judges really were good judges, they would go out and know every show they're going to see before they go see it. And we realized that, we won't have many judges for too long if we continue to press that little bit rule. However, we left them on the slides because if you are a judge and you've been assigned to a show that you are not familiar with or that you think you might have trouble with, like Shakespeare, you don't like Shakespeare, but you want to be a good judge, you want to go do it and do your duty, that's fine, but perhaps you could look at the script first and say, you know what, let me get ready for the language, let me get ready for the characters, the story, and get ready for what I'm about to see to prepare myself, so at least I'm kind of got a leg up before I get there. Or if you don't like the F word, you read a script and realize, this is one of those that Todd was warning me about. Okay? You can find that in advance too, or nudity, or whatever the case may be. So if you do, if you're not familiar with works, at least find out what you're going to see before you go see it, so you can make sure it's not something that you should be calling an alternate for instead. Okay. This slide is just to let you know that the rest of the adjudication criteria was not written by me. It was written by people who know what the hell they're looking at in each of the categories, so that you can trust what they've said, and if you have questions, feel free to contact one of them to get more information. Performances. This one's easy. We all know what good acting is. We see it in the Tony Awards and the Academy Awards every year. We all can all say, Julia Roberts is great, and Meryl Streep is even better, and the other people, there's all kinds of gradations down from there. We're asking you to go a little bit deeper. How creative was the character on stage? How hard was it to put on? If you're asking for a guy who can play a, late 40s father of two, I can do that one in my sleep. I do it every day. Not hard for me to do. If you're looking for a guy to play the Elephant Man, this is as disfigured as I get, which is, I realize, horrendous. But it's still, this is as disfigured as I've ever been. And it would be much harder for me to put on the Elephant Man than it would to put on a modern-day dramedy of, a bunch of friends sitting around a dinner table with kids running around. How hard was the character? How creative was it? How were their choices clear and appropriate and consistent throughout? Did they maintain focus? And then was their projection good? Was their diction good? Did they speak too fast? I know. It's for your sake. I'm doing this for you. Did they play with others? Were they doing the right show and the rest of the cast was doing the wrong thing? Or the opposite? Were they chewing the scenery and they were distractions the entire show? That's up to you as a judge to decide, whether they were good or bad and how hard it was to do. And if it was a musical, you have to judge how well they sang and how well they danced and were they able to maintain focus and character throughout the musical and dance numbers. Did they keep their acting going? But also, how hard was it? How big was the role? How many lines? What was the range of songs? How many songs were there? How hard was the harmonies? And how much dance was there? How many costume changes? How physical was the role? How much extra stuff do they have to do? We're asking you to be the Olympic judges of theater judging. We want you to know that a triple sow cow is harder than triple toe loop, and to weight it that way. And I don't know which one it is, triple Salchow, triple toe loop. Whichever one's harder, that's the one which weight harder. Okay? It's love letters versus Hamlet. If you're giving the guy in love letters a 10, I'm going to come find you and shoot you. Because love letters doesn't get a 10. The show doesn't get a 10, and the guy doesn't get a 10. I don't care how good he is. He can go on Broadway tomorrow, and he still gets a 7 at the best. Because he looked great in his suit. And he stood beautifully behind the desk. And he read his script to you the entire night. And at the very end of the show, he finally touched the actress who was playing the lady, and they bowed together for the first time, and that was it. Versus Hamlet has to memorize Shakespeare, soliloquies, emote all over the place, a period piece, probably an accent, got girlfriends dying and all kinds of poisons going around. It's a much harder role. And if you give love letters a 10 for a guy that read his script to you, where do you go for a guy that at least did a very good job as Hamlet? Okay? You have to weight your score, is what I'm saying. The highest you can give in some cases won't be a 10. Even if it's the best you've ever seen, if it wasn't that hard to put on, it shouldn't get the 10. And we'll talk about scoring later. Performances get a little iffy. It's easier with technical elements to kind of understand the level of difficulty stuff. This is a slide to remind me not to talk about this here, but you'll also be asked on your ballot to deal with leads, cameos, and sex of each actor. We'll talk about that when we get to balloting. Technical criteria. Again, everything I'm going to talk about, I should start with these 3 lines. Does the technical element serve the story being told? In other words, is it appropriate to the piece in the presenting space, or was it gratuitous? We'll talk about that in the set design in a second. And then is it consistent quality throughout? Or did they design a really good opening scene, and that set for that opening scene was the whole set for the entire show, and it kind of didn't work for the rest of the piece? And then again, how hard was it to do? And again, based on what is average in watch, and then each specific element gets more information. Set design. This is one of those awards that always gets the same score. If you love the set, people tend to go 10, 10, 10, 10, 10 for set design, set construction, set painting, set dressing, and properties. And we kind of go, stop it. Nothing deserves that. If you walk into a show and you see 3 walls, a door, and 2 windows, that's what we call a box set, and they're not hard to design. They're not even hard to build. But you walk in and you see it and you kind of go, holy cow, look at that set. I could live there, I could eat there, I could drink there. That looks like a place I know. You go, oh, I can't believe how realistic it looks. 10, 10, 10, 10. No, stop it. It's the set dressing you love. It's the painting you love. We've had so many sets win all the awards because it looks so realistic. And what I'm saying is, set design is one of those you should say, was it artistic? And how much did it take to figure out what to do with this show? I asked one of our best directors in the area, I said, what is your favorite set design ever that you've ever seen? And when she stopped and thought about it for a while, she said, you know what, Copenhagen at Kennedy Center. I said, really? Why? I said, because it wasn't set the way the play is told. Copenhagen is a dinner party among 3 nuclear physicists talking about why America won and Germany lost with the nuclear bomb race. And instead of setting it in a dining room or in a house, the set designer said, you know what, director, let's put this on a big disc in space. And so they literally created this large circle in the middle of the Kennedy Center stage, and it was just black all around, kind of a space field all around. And then the actors, and it had a slight rake to it, and the actors did it on this big disc. And they were the neutrons and the protons and the electrons of the atom as they moved together and apart and until the bomb finally went off at the end of the show. Not hard to build. Not hard to paint. No real set dressing whatsoever. Maybe a chair in the middle of it. And that was it. And yet it struck this great director as one of the best set designs she's ever seen. Because it took someone to kind of say, you know what, artistically, let's challenge the audience with this. This is that award. This, if you walk into Noises Off and you kind of go, look at that set. It's got 2 levels and 2 doors over there and a stairs down and a door there and a window there that they can crawl through. And then at intermission, they turn the set around. Oh my God, now you're seeing the back of the set. And in the second intermission, they turn it around again. Oh my God, look at that. And you go to the next Noises Off and it looks the exact same. And that you realize the set designer didn't do anything. They looked at the back of the script where that set design is, and that's pretty much the set design you have to do. Because the timing of that show doesn't work unless you have 2 doors up there with a ladder down, and then 1 door in the middle, and the window out. And yes, it has to turn around twice. It's a set construction nightmare. It's a set construction nightmare. But set design-wise, they didn't do anything. Or at least they did very little. Because they used the same set design that's always used. This is the Set Design Art Award. Ming-Cho Lee, one of the best designers in the world, was once asked, what was your worst set design? Which one do you regret the most? And he didn't even think about it for a second. He said, K2. I went, K2? That was one of your best set designs ever. It was in the middle of the arena stage. It was this giant mountain that rose out of the arena stage. They got fog and all kinds of stuff. It looked like a giant mountain in the middle of the arena stage. And we're kind of went, oh, how can that be your worst set design? It was gorgeous. You got all kinds of awards for it. He says, yeah. The play couldn't support it. It was a much better play on 2 boxes in a studio black box theater. Because the play is about the 2 guys dying on a mountain, not about the mountain. So people walked into that show and they kind of said, oh, the set was amazing. The play was When in truth, the play got all the way to arena stage. It came out of the college and it had made it. It had finally made it to their big professional production, and they screwed it up by not making it about the guys anymore. They made it about the set. I've seen that show in lots of community theaters. One sticks out in my mind where I went to a show and the curtains open and it's like, oh, this gorgeous red set, 2 levels, this grand entrance, and on top of one of the landings it has this, alcove that goes up to French doors, and I kind of go, oh, look at this grand set. And then the show started. I'd never heard of the show before. It was a brand new show to me. And people would come in through that grand entrance and they'd come down the stairs and they'd wind up on the floor in the 6 feet that set designer had left them between the front of his set and the apron of the stage. And the entire show was done in those 6 feet. And all the actors moved like this the entire time. I mean, they didn't have any way to get in different angles from each other. They were all literally parallel the entire time because they didn't need all of that. That set was completely gratuitous. And it screwed up. They literally had to move furniture back out of the way of the curtain to close it at intermission. That's how little room they had. And you're sitting there going, God, the set is glorious. Why does this show suck so much? Because the set is wrong. We've had sets win that were wrong in watch. And it drives people who know theater crazy. It's kind of like, what were you thinking? The set is supposed to be this dilapidated hotel. And you walk in and said, that's the nicest bed and breakfast I've ever seen. And it's gorgeous. It looks like it's like 10 for it being a gorgeous bed and breakfast. But if you listen to the show, it's supposed to be a rundown, dilapidated hotel in a beach community. How appropriate was it to the piece? Does it serve the story being told? That's why we continue to emphasize that. And then, how hard was it to do? Again, building Copenhagen, the disc in space at Kennedy Center, was not hard to build. It wasn't hard to paint. Designing it was hard. Coming up with the concept and realizing, let's put this on the atom and not in a house, is the hard part. Reward that. Reward art with this, not realism. I'm not saying disparage realism. I'm not saying score down, but I am saying how hard was it? If you're looking at a box set, what was really the stuff that convinced you that that was a great set? Was it really the 3 walls that they pulled out of stock and put back together? Or was it the stuff on the stage, the set dressing, that made it look that way? Okay, this is the art design. And also, one last thing about this one. How hard was it to do it? Musicals, unlike plays, don't have a single set typically. They've got 27 different scenes. And so the stage never really gets full. It comes, here's this piece flies in occasionally, other pieces roll on. You get to separate how good was it for a musical set versus how good was it for a play set. We used to have a single set design award. We finally said, there are 2 different kinds of design. So you're judging it not based on Watch's average play design or set design, it's on Watch's average musical set design. How good was it compared to other musicals? Not the best play you've seen. Architecturally, you also get to evaluate that. I've directed that show. I've directed the show that made no architectural sense whatsoever. You walk in, it's a typical little box set. You walk in the front door on stage left, and then you can turn and you go up, and there's like on the back wall there's a set of stairs, and it goes up to a small landing above the front door that you just walked in, and there are 2 doors up there to 2 rooms. That's the dumbest house I've ever seen in my life. It's got 2 bedrooms hanging off the front of the building. Makes no sense whatsoever, unless it's like a beach community where you got carport. But it made no sense in terms of architecturally. Again, art design, set design should be art. However, unfortunately, set construction always goes to whatever set the judges like the most, as opposed to how hard was it to build. How much extra stuff did they do to make this set? Did they pull it out of stock? Can you tell? Did they weld metal together for you? How many people are listed in the set construction detail in your playbill? Look there for clues. If it's one guy or a couple guys, they pulled it from stock. If it's listed 27 names and it says welders or foam sprayer or whatever the case may be, look for clues on how hard it was to build. There have been some gorgeous things done by several companies around the area, and you can just tell how much detail went into them to build it. Reward those. But you have to kind of look past, say, you know what? Was it the set construction that looks great, or the set dressing in front of it? Separate the two. How quiet was it? How much stuff had to move? Did it disintegrate in front of your eyes? Did things fall off the walls automatically? That's special effects, but it's also somebody kind of figuring out with the construction how to make things work in this set that required, yes, it's a single set, but it also had to be 27 other things. It's going to see once I maybe saw once on Broadway. It's all done in a single set bar, but things had to come and move, and they wound up being on top of the bar and looking down, and it's quite a show staging wise. Great set design does not mean it was difficult or great set construction, and vice versa. Noise is off. Perfect example. Hard to construct, fairly easy to design, because the design kind of has to be the same design they used in the Broadway production. Look past the wow and think about, yes, it's incredible when you walk in the door, but was it the wrong set? And how hard was it to build? Are there trap doors? Are there, how much did they have to build past the set to make the reality work? Did they use appropriate masking? Did the set kind of extend past the walls? And how much stuff did they have to do that is different from our typical community theater? Was it just stick and muslin, or was it foam sprayed or metal welded, or how much other stuff they have to do for that show? Stairways and railings are much more difficult than just walls on the stage. Set painting. We've had set painting awards go to someone who painted platforms. Not the judge's fault entirely. In this case, they were awarding the 42-foot drop that was painted many years before by somebody else. Or they were awarding the 42-foot drop that the company rented from A.E. Mitchell. If you're about to give a high score for drops, look at the playbill for clues. Does it say drop painted by and a name, or does it say special thanks to A.E. Mitchell? And if you can't tell from the playbill, ask. If you're about to give a very high score to set painting and you hope they painted it, because that's a lot more work to paint it yourself than it is to rent it, ask. We've had sets win for yellow. They've been yellow. They get the set painting award. Somebody slapped yellow on walls. And in truth, the set dressing for that show deserved the award it got. The set painting was yellow. Because the set was great. 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10. It kills us. And it kills watch as a whole when things go to the wrong people. And when a production, which was a great production, these were great productions from top to bottom. But they weren't that hard at every element. There is no show like that. There is no show where every element is a 10 in terms of quality and a 10 in terms of level of difficulty. None. Les Mis is as close as I can come. And even Les Mis has some elements that you kind of go, well, Gavroche is cute, but he's not that hard to roll. You know. How much attention to detail was there? If you walk into a space that you've been to before and you kind of go, is there a proscenium here normally? And you kind of go, wait a second, this looks like a different space to me. And you realize they built a proscenium so they could do curtains for the first time in a space that's usually just a big black box. And how much attention to detail do they have to do? We've done things like that where people kind of walk in and think they're sitting down into a regular proscenium facility, and we have to tell them, no, we have to build that for every show if we want to have a proscenium arch and curtains. And we change it around for whatever show may be. I'll talk a lot about Eldon Street because that's where I'm from, but anybody could be doing this presentation and they'll talk about the shows that did or didn't get judged at their company because people didn't realize how much was done for that show or how much they have to do every time. Some of our companies have to deal with breaking their sets down every night. You can take that into consideration. If you know that you're going to see Port City Playhouse at their old space at T.C. Williams or at Nanny J. Lee or all the places they've worked over the years, and they never have permanent set status. And so everything they do, they have to kind of build to be able collapsible into a box. And so if you're judging their set construction, you're kind of going, well, when they slammed the door, the sets went like this. Well, how much do they go like this? Because typically they go like this at Port City. And if they only go like this one time, they slam that door hard. Well, that's great set construction. When you have to break it down every night into a 10 by 10 box. Reston's the same way. Reston's got this glorious space with a great fly. They fly everything up at night because that space has to be available to whoever wants to use the community center during the week. Okay? If you know that about a company, take it into account when you're dealing with set construction. Set painting, again, look past the wow factor. Was the window real, which is set construction, or was it painted on? Set painting. How much painting did they do? Is it wallpaper or was it painted detail? If you're just looking at tan walls, that's a 5. Nice tan. Okay? And if you don't know if they painted the drop, find out. Set decoration, set dressing. Good news, you guys get this right every time. Every time. We've never had anybody complain about the set decoration award going to the wrong person. Because you'll walk into the show and you'll kind of go, holy cow, look at the stuff on stage. It's the right period, it's the right place. It's like, where did they find that chaise lounge? Oh my God, it changes from a chaise lounge into a couch into something else. And you kind of go, it was all perfect. I walked into a production of You Can't Take It With You at Port Tobacco many, many years ago, and you looked at the stage and go, I can't believe the clutter of this home. And it was all period, all the right papers, all the right phones, all the right typewriters. So how did they do that on stage? How much stuff was there? How period was it? How hard was it to collect? Yes, the internet has made this job a lot easier for a lot of folks. You can now eBay for nearly anything you want. Okay? But shopping's part of the job, okay, and how big their budget was. But level of difficulty, how hard was it to acquire that stuff? Again, look to your playbill. How much was built for this show? If they've had that seem like perfect chaise lounge that contorts and configures into a chair and then into a chaise and then into a couch, they built that. That doesn't exist in life. Somebody had to build that piece of furniture. Look to the playbill for tips. As good as you guys are at set decoration, set dressing, you guys suck at this, at props. Because just like set design and set construction get the same score in everybody's, nearly every ballot, set decoration and props get the same score. And yet this has gone to prop light shows that had like 4 props in them. A gun, a piece of paper, 3 things that people touched the entire time. How many things were touched? How hard was it to do? We have never had a show that had decent food in it get this award. And yet, if you talk to any properties person, the show they don't want to do is anything with food. People do last night at Ballyhoo. Last night at Ballyhoo, you have to serve 3 meals, hot. Nobody can throw up on stage. Everybody has to survive the meal. All right? And yet, we have no kitchens next to our stages. We have barely any water next to our stages, let alone a microwave or a stove. That's the hard job. And yet we overlook it because it's just food. Barely a prop. It's food. No, it's hours of preparation work. The props person has to get their extra time early just to get all that stuff ready to go and keep it hot and get it fresh. I'm not saying give it a high score for food, but at the same time, don't overlook food and the obvious. If they've got a ton of weapons in the show, yes, probably the fight choreographer brought them with him or her. But at the same time, the props person gets credit for all the weapons in this show and how perfect they were for the battles that happened, and how appropriate they were for the piece and the place. Accuracy. Yes, a lot of folks tend to get tied up in little tiny details, like, well, the scotch was a little dark. They wind up giving it a 4. Well, how many other props were there on stage? How many things did the actors actually touch on stage? Light design. Light design includes anything that can be run from the board. And that includes, in some cases, haze. So if you're seeing the light streaming through what looks like water vapor, that's a light design element, not special effect. Okay, because it's being run from the board and they're turning that on like a DJ. All right. How much light design was there? We've had this award go to shows that had a total of 4 cues. Up at the beginning of the show, down at intermission, up after intermission, and down at the end of the show. That's what we call a great wash, and any designer can do it. And yet, because the show was great, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10. Light design is how much light was there? How many different looks was it doing? Was it gratuitous? I've seen great laser light shows at the community theater level, and I sit there and go, you know what? You should have put a little more time into the acting of this show, as opposed to the budget that you put into the lighting. All right, I've seen lots of those shows as well. Was the light even noticed?